we're going to be imagining that we're utilizing the pelvic tuck in the tilt quite a bit here. So we're going to tuck our pelvis and try to reach one of our front hip bones to the ground. Then we're going to rotate over to that other front hip, trying to drive that into the ground. Then we're going to be shifting down below that front hip to the sits bones right below it, driving that into the ground. Now we're going to shift over to the other side of our body and drive that other sits bones into the ground. So just like that, 4 points. So back to the starting point with that front hip coming towards the ground, shifting over to the other front hip. Now tilting your pelvis to get that sits bone on the ground and shifting over while in a tilt to get that other sits bone on the ground. Now we're going to tuck and try to drive that front hip into the ground while staying in a tuck. Shift over to the other front hip and tilt now to drive the sits bone into the ground and shift over to the other sits bone, still while in a tilt, and get that other sits bones down into the ground. So we're kind of balancing on that one sits bones right now. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction. Let's shift back to the other sits bone. Tuck your pelvis to drive that front hip toward the ground. Shift over while in a tuck to that other front hip. Tilt and get that sits bones below that front hip on the ground. Shift over to the other sits bone to drive that into the ground. Now once you get this, you can go a little bit faster if you like, but you're tilting and tucking while giving each one of those points of the rectangle an opportunity to drive toward the ground, into the mat, into the ground. And as you get this motion, you can max out even more on your tilt and your tuck. You can let your knees move freely. Your lower back is leaving the ground on your tilt. And I'm going to shift directions now. I'm tilting, moving to one sits bone, over to the other, back to my front hip. Lower back's pressed into the ground.